Anti-Imperialist America, Revolutionary Working Class Anti-Imperialist Analysis. It is a beautiful Sunday morning in my humble home in rural North Carolina. I'm looking out over the window. It's a little overcast. The fall leaves are coming down. I'm able to open the window because it's a little overcast. Usually, if I have too much light, it saturates the camera. And if you see my face is a little bit bright, that's why. It's worse if it's not overcast. What I'm able to look at, I might be able to show you guys. How about I show you guys my view from my humble home here? I'm gonna turn the webcam around and set it back. I know it's a little unorthodox, just to set the tone here. I'm in rural North Carolina. If you look out over my yard, it's a little overcast. Um, still have still left some of the picnic we had the other day out on the table, but you know it's nice out. Set this camera back. A little overcast. I don't know if I'll do that again. Kind of messes up the image. Put it back. Not too bad. Not too bad. Anyways, it's a beautiful overcast fall morning here in rural North Carolina. Um, and I'm doing another episode of Dust James Anti-Imperialist America. This is episode number 37. I've been doing this, I think, going almost a year now. And congratulations to everyone for helping us get over 500 subscribers. Just a quick note, if you like this material, please make this a better show. Share this out on all the social media platforms. Share this on your Facebook. Share this on your Twitter. A good thing that works if you share this as it's live in Facebook groups. That's a tip to other YouTubers and Facebook livers. If that's what I did when I first started this show. When I first started this show, I had 0 live comments for like the first month or two. And what really helped me out was when I started sharing it. I would schedule it, or I would share it in a lot of Facebook groups while I was live or after I was live, trying to build up, over that initial hump of trying to create a show. And I've had moderate success, and I get a lot of fulfillment and enjoyment out of the work I do here. And I believe I'm supporting a good cause of developing ideology, innovating ideology to bring about a better future, to bring about a better world, to support socialism. It's a beautiful Sunday morning. A lot of people go to a church on Sunday morning. They go to church on Sunday morning. It's kind of like to get right with God, to give them like a spiritual peace so they can get through the week, to keep them away from vices and to look to positive things and invest in positive things. And that's very similar of what I do here on Anti-Imperialist America. I'm trying to get people spirit right, pushed in the right directions, positive priorities. And not only that, not only to get that feeling, but have that feeling based on something positive, building ideology that will affect a better material reality for the working class internationally. And that's an even stronger stronger goal than just to be able to feel right, but to be able to feel right knowing you're making a difference, making a positive change, and affecting the material reality of working class brothers and sisters here and around the world. Quick shout out, Mr. Red and his statist. It's always glad to have live comments. If people in the live comments want to ask a question, go right ahead. If people in the comments just want a shout out, tell me where you're from. Um, Tell me a little bit about yourself. You want to promote your show or page, I'll read it and we can discuss it. Maybe I already know about it. Maybe I already like your show or page. Just get in the comments and I'll read I try to read most of the comments. If I have time and the ability, I try to read most of the comments. So, quick announcement. So, everyone saw the announcement last night with David Fox. I am very happy and proud to say that me and David are going to be starting, hopefully, a weekly live show. We're calling it Working Class Revolt. Two folks in trades. I'm a truck driver. He's a boilermaker and a union man. Two folks in trades going to be taught from both the revolutionary Marxist perspective. He's in Australia. I'm here in the United States. International working class show that will go through the latest headlines and also maybe get into some ideological work and ideological discussions on our show. It's going to be 8 p.m. on Saturdays from 8 to 9, hopefully an hourly, hopefully weekly. And I'm looking forward to that. And given my new schedule, I'm most likely going to do this Sunday morning. Anti-Imperialist America will probably be done Sunday morning. I moved into this neighborhood, and there's actually a church at the end of at the end of my road, about a mile up the road. It's very close. I believe it's actually a black church. Um, that don't bother me none. My wife's Mexican. I'm already international as it is. And I was thinking about going there after the COVID to try to, grow roots in the community, be more a part of the community. I was going to join the church there when COVID starts. So I'll try to do these if I can do these weekly or intermittently through the week. If I get some time off through the week, I might do some through the week. But if I can, this is a good time for me. My wife and my kid like to sleep in, and I'm able to add to the domestic responsibilities when my child is awake. Watching him is I get a lot of fulfillment, and that helps my wife. I was actually watching my son Sherman um, last during the announcement last night. He probably won't be a part of the show, but if they're here, my wife needs some help. I might sit him on my lap during my shows, take some of the stress off of her. So that's great. Doing a show 8 p.m. on Saturday. I'll probably be doing this Sunday morning, maybe Sunday afternoon after church opens back up. I think about going down to church down the road to be more a part of the community, get some more links, be less isolated. I recommend it to everybody. Regardless of what you do, you got to be out and among the masses. You can't isolate yourself in a little bubble. With the internet, it's getting even worse. The ability of Facebook, you're able to just block whoever you disagree with. And it's very damaging creating these realities. It's creating weak-skinned people. Weak-skinned people who immediately freak out when they see other people's positions and understandings. On my Facebook page, both my personal and my public page, Dustin, I try to have a variety of people from various perspectives, and I like to keep a civil conversation. If we don't want to be isolated and we believe our ideas are right, we should be able to have scrutiny of our ideas. We should back up our ideas and defend those ideas. And every time we interact with people, either online or in person, we develop our skills as revolutionaries. We develop our skills. We develop our world outlook. If we have something wrong, this is a scientific view. If we have something wrong, someone challenge it, we consider that view, we take into our knowledge of the conditions and the reality, and then we either say, no, it's not that way, or we incorporate that into our worldview after further analysis to make sure that new concept is correct. we can't be stagnant. We have to constantly be developing and progressing. Shout out to Koro Valdiva. Greetings from New York. It's great to have you here. Shout out to Marvelous MDR Bermuda from the Philippines. It's great to have an international audience. The struggles of the working class have no borders. I carried that as a protest sign with Che Guevara at one point. I believe I think it was the PSL that actually had that protest sign in a few places I went to. I kind of made my own version of it. I've been in this for a while. That was probably the anti-war movement under the second, no, under the Bush administration. David Rovex, I did a good interview, said the height of the U.S. anti-war movement was right before the re-election of George W. Bush, and there was a lot of Democrats involved, and there was a push because of the popular sentiment against the war. And then when Bush got reelected, it kind of tapered off. And when Obama got elected, it got even smaller. And, I was still in high school. I would go to school with War Sucks Church, War Sucks Church. I was like the anti war activist in my high school. And I didn't really actually get out to the protest movement, anti war movement, till it was firmly under the Obama administration. And it had shrunk to a few dedicated. It was always been led by Marxist Leninists, the Answer Coalition, now under PSL, and before that under Workers' World. I think the Answer Coalition shifted. Um, I think there's a split between Workers' World and PSL. Um, Largely movement leading organizations. My position is I think that's positive. We need to get more working people out to that. I think we need to recraft our ideology that can be addressed to a larger portion of the working class, of the international working class, the United States. Our goal is to sell socialism. Our goal is to make socialism sound appealing to the genuine class interests of the working class of all creeds and colors in the United States and our prospective countries, to support an international movement and progressing for the advancement towards socialism. Status Marxism, in particular, must have the claim not to form isolated bubbles, but to understand and change the world as it shows itself concretely. I guess I'll get right into my intro today. All right. I'm starting to title the video. If you notice the title of this video, I don't know if titles come through in Facebook, but if you're on YouTube, you'll see the title is Revolutionary Strategy, Anti-Imperialist America number 37. I think that's a good YouTube. I think I'm going to do that both with Working Class Revolt and Anti-Imperialist America. It's a good, you got to have if you can get like a subject line that's interesting or a news topic line that's interesting and then say the name of your show, you might be able to call more people into. I'm actually copying that from a positive anti-imperialist YouTuber, Richard Medhurst. Actually does that. And I used to think, oh, that's misleading. He puts that and then he just talks about whatever he wants. He talks about that briefly. But I mean, it's a positive strategy. Whatever brings people into the positive message and gets these ideas out there and spreads socialism, the better. We can always learn and improve, better video techniques, better sharing, format, all that stuff. We always have room for improvement and progression. All right, so I'll get into a bit of a speech. Revolutionary strategy. Revolutionary strategy. Let's start off and define, why do we need a revolution? Why can't we just vote Biden and make the system better? Or what if we get enough people simply to back Bernie Sanders? Wouldn't we have health care then? Why do you need a revolution? Well, Bernie Sanders has backed down continuously in the face of the corporate oligarch controlled Democratic Party. He is largely a sheepdog, getting the masses, awakening them on our interests and points like healthcare, like education, and pushing them into the criminal imperialist Democratic Party. And Bernie Sanders himself is an imperialist. He has backed imperialist wars. He is a member of the largest of the legislative wing of the largest terrorist organization ever existed in human history, U.S. imperialism, the leader of imperialism. There is no hope under democratic reforms. There's no hope for the working class. Conditions for the working class under the current system are getting worse. The working class has a lowering life expectancy in the heart of the beast, the U.S. imperialist system. We have better conditions in the global south that are being constantly afflicted with U.S. backed dictators, U.S. interventions, all for the benefit of the oligarchs, not the American people. We have slightly better conditions in the global south, and even our conditions are worsening in the imperialist system. There is no hope in democratic reforms. The system is fundamentally undemocratic. This is why we must be revolutionaries. Okay, so we're all revolutionaries. We understand that we're revolutionaries. What should we do? I'm in agreement. We need a revolution. Y'all out there are probably in the need. We need a revolution. So let's all take up guns and take on the state right now. The 4 or 5 of us. Let's see. We got at least 5 people watching this motherfucker. You out there in Europe, me over here in the United States, we're going to get some AK-47s. We're going to go to the damn gun market because the gun laws suck in this country. And we're going to go out and fight a revolution and take on and take power. Well, what's going to happen with that? We are going to be shot and killed and imprisoned, and it's not going to go well for us. And we're going to look like lunatics to the average population that is bought off by bourgeois propaganda. Okay. That's not the strategy. We know we need a revolution, but we don't have the physical means or the people's support to carry out that revolution, so we're not going to do that. So what should we do? Okay, we need more people to fight this revolution. All right, let's go out on the street corners. Let's get on the internet. Let's get as many people for this revolution as possible. Let's go out in the street and be like, we need a revolution. Come fight the revolution with us. Come pick up arms with us. We need more people to fight this revolution, to overthrow this undemocratic system and install socialism so we have a better world and life for ourselves. Let's do that. Well, we get out in the corner. We tell everybody, hey, we want a revolution. Hey, let's go get armed. Hey, let's go against the state. People are going to look at us like we're crazy. No one's going to go about it. Maybe the 5, 10, 15 people watching this right now, maybe we can get another 100 people. Maybe we can get another 1,000 people. And that would be generous if we could convince 1,000 people to take up arms against the state. But ultimately, we're not going to get as many people we need, and we're going to fail. We're going to be arrested. We're going to be shot. We're going to die, and we're going to paint socialism as they already do paint it, but we're going to point socialism as a murderous organization or a murderous ideology, a destructive ideology. That's what we're going to do. So we can't, the few of us now, go out and take up arms against the state, and we can't just promote other people take up arms against the state. So what do we need to do? Okay. If we want to make a successful revolution, we need power. And to get power, all power comes from the people. All forms of government, knowingly or not knowingly, the people, for that government to exist, have to advocate or let up some of their power and trust that power in the state for a trade-off, for a trade. It's like the contract, the societal, the governmental contract with the existing government or existing state power. We get something in return. We aggregate part of our power to that. Well, as if that state doesn't do something for the people, it won't demand the power and it will lose its strength. And this is what happens with different modes of society. Hunter gatherer was demanded less, was less efficient, had less stability and material strength as the slave society. And then feudalism, which gave some opportunities to peasants to save after they gave their money to landlords, was more effective, demanded more of the popular power than the slave society. And then capitalism, which is even more of an improvement past feudalism. And in capitalism, we have the illusion we're free of these illusions of democratic societies, and we actually do have. They actually are material advancements. There is more democratic rights in capitalist societies than feudal societies. And that's an advancement. That's a revolutionary advancement. The American Civil War there was a capitalist system with a slave society within it. And the slave society was holding the progress back of the entire country and world. And it took a bloody revolution to get rid of that. It took the capitalists in the North aligned with progressives, abolitionists, and the working class in the North to destroy the system of slavery in the United States. Okay, so we know we need a revolution. We know the democratic system isn't working. Every government has a trade. People give a little bit of their authority to that government, or a little bit of power to that government in a trade for that. Well, as that system becomes not working, as more people become disinfected, as more people become unemployed, people are going to look for alternatives. Alternatives in both their ideology that maintains the system and eventually the system itself. And we as revolutionaries who want to bring along a change, ideological change, a political change, a better system for the working class. We need to convince as many of the working class and build as much power as possible. Reach out and organize the disaffected masses and both the working class and the oppressed nations within the United States to build power and push for a better system. Okay, so how do we win people to our side if we can't go out and tell them we need a revolution right now? We have to go to where the people are at. We have to advocate for advancement in their material conditions. We have to take part in bourgeois elections. We have to take part in reformist movements. We have to fight for material conditions. And in this fight for better material conditions, for reform, for positive reforms, for the building of working class infrastructure, community groups, unions, in that fight, we develop schools for revolution. We develop ideology. It is from the mass struggle that we get recruits for the revolutionary ideology, and maybe even a revolutionary vanguard party can be recruited from the mass struggle, both labor, community organizing, and at the same time, we're simultaneously building political infrastructure outside the influence and control of the duopoly, outside the political infrastructure of the imperialist system and both its pawns, both its war criminal Wall Street backed parties. So I wholly recommend that we support parties like the Green Party as part of our mass work. And in that, so how do we stop ourselves from becoming complete reformists? We know we can't take up arms and go against the state right now. We know we can't go out on the street corner and advocate that larger numbers of people go against the street. We work within the current movements, the current struggles. We work on the ideology, the positive aspects of the ideology already instilled in the population. Ideas of anti-racist ideas, pro-working class ideas, um, just outrage against capitalist exploitation, national oppression. We organize on these lines. We push for positive reforms. We build parties like the Green Party. So, how do we stop ourselves from being completely reformist? How do we stop ourselves from getting lost in the movement? And I think a lot of parties have. A lot of parties that claim to be revolutionary have simply forfeited their revolutionary position to be a part of the movement, to lead the protest cage. Edward Bernstein, the famous revisionist, said, "The movement is everything, the goal is nothing." Well, if you lose your goal, if you lose the idea you're advancing towards a socialist society, a socialist society is where the people control the means of production and use those means of production to build up the productive forces and build a transitional state into communism, a higher stage where there's so much abundance of resources we can take as we want, we can give back as we will, and the need for a state goes away. That's communism. Socialism takes us to get there. So, how do we not lose ourselves and become reformist? How do we maintain our revolutionary edge? I'm getting into ideas of revisionism, left adventurism. Revisionism is where you rewrite your revolutionary theory, your revolutionary analysis to the point where it's no longer revolutionary. You're simply another social democrat, bourgeois reformer. And to go too far, those people I mentioned earlier, just take up the guns against the state with the 5 or 10 people we have, or advocate it, and we can grow that group to 100 or 200. That's left adventurism. And the other extreme is revisionism. And I think the Communist Party under Browder was positive but struggled with revisionism. And CPUSA has issues, it's still a positive organization. They've had issues with revisionism. So there's a fine line between revisionism and left adventurism. And I believe the middle ground is working within the movement, building the mass movement while maintaining schools of revolutionary thought, revolutionary ideology. And that can be done in other ways. I am trying to establish um, an ideological organization, a think tank, with Comrade Caleb Maupin, the CPI, Center for Political Innovation. And this is largely a purely ideological endeavor to basically craft, you know how the think tanks of the bourgeoisie craft things, craft messages that appeal to the masses to get them to support the capitalist system, support against their own interests. A Center for Political Innovation is a Marxist supporting, socialist supporting, working class controlled think tank. We actually have an easier job. We have to crack messages for the larger amount of the working class to support policies that are in their interest. So we have an easier task, but we have less funding and we have less control. Is the problem. And also, this strategy can be done in revolutionary vanguard type organizations. You can have a vanguard meeting that is separate from mass organizations, that works with mass organizations. People of revolutionary parties can work in and amongst and have influence in larger mass organizations. They're not exactly front groups. Those groups must maintain their own democratic. To get people in a mass group, You have to have a democratic system and rules in place and respect those rules to keep to legitimately maintain power in that organization. If that is becomes a front group, it becomes ineffective. It becomes isolated. To get more people in mass organizations, even if they're being led by revolutionary leaders, you have to respect the people who aren't necessarily revolutionaries. You have to respect the democratic decisions of that mass group, and this includes unions, community organizations as well. So that's another strategy. Revolutionaries can work in mass organizations. Revolutionaries can lead mass organizations. Revolutionaries can develop alternative media. That's what I'm doing here with Anti-Imperialist America. That's what me and comrade David Fox will be doing with Working Class Revolt. We are spreading revolutionary ideology, socialist ideology. So I believe that's the correct strategy. We work within the movements. We build our revolutionary parties and organizations, and we build infrastructure like the Green Party outside the political control of the duopoly and the imperialists in the United States. And we have to be strategic with the reform movements. We have to analyze it. I don't support Biden, and I don't think any communist, Marxist, or revolutionary should support Biden. And the reason why I think that is because Biden is firmly in the imperialist camp, and we get workers behind a power that is completely controlled by finance capital. All we are doing is giving up our power to them because there's no way of reforming. There's no way of holding them in check. I organized under Obama for 8+ years. We had little or no effect. They keep saying, well, if you vote Biden in, well, maybe you can have more effect on him than Trump. And that is a complete and utter lie. Obama used chemical weapons on the Native American, indigenous water protectors, trying to stop a pipeline. The Obama administration was funded and controlled by the fossil fuel industry, regardless of their lip service to the environment and these Ponzi green schemes that are usually backed by oil. They're just money-making schemes. The Democrats are firmly controlled by our enemy. And I think if we're going to build political power, it has to be political power that I call it building workers' power. That workers' power has to be outside the control of their movement. It can't be influenced. It can't be corrupted. It has to be of, for, and by the people to push about positive change. And they say, well, that's a long uphill battle. The Green Party's only had 1%, or our union's just starting, or we'll never have. You can't be defeatist. You can't be pessimistic. You got to be optimistic. You have to do what works. You have to analyze what works. You got to try hard. You got to try. You got to guess and check. Maybe this didn't work. Let's try something else. Both ideological, organization, mass building organizations. You try, it doesn't work. You try something else. And it's not just you. There's no one correct strategy. It is the entirety of the movement. As more people become, it is the conditions that ultimately lead to the revolution. And more people become dissatisfied with the system. Those people look for alternatives. Those people who are dissatisfied with the system build different alternating ideologies. The current one exists. And eventually use those ideologies to convince enough people to bring about the political revolution and change the system for the better. And that system that comes into power, that regime that comes into power, has to be loyal to those infrastructures, those people power organizations, labor and community organizing that took to put them in power. I believe that's the correct position. Build the mass movement. Build a mass movement that builds workers' power. Don't just funnel workers' efforts and workers' resources into the machine of the corrupt system that simply legitimates the power and promotes the illusion that we have any democratic rights in this country. when the United States is less democratic than Venezuela, Bolivia. Now, I think Bolivia, the movement in Bolivia is one of the most inspiring and workable models. And we can't be stagnant on our ideology. We can't be like, well, the Soviet Union was the best revolution that ever existed. We have to do exactly what the Soviet Union did to get our revolution. Material conditions change and material conditions advance. And what we need to do as revolutionaries changes. What worked under Lenin won't work, may not work in the United States as it currently exists. We can't just say, oh, Mao was the best revolutionary. We have to do exactly as Mao done. We can learn from these revolutionaries. We must take. So how do you keep from being a revisionist? If you're not going to do exactly what the revolutionaries did, like Stalin and Lenin or Mao, Mao is probably the most successful revolutionary in human history. And he developed that revolution on the accomplishments of the Soviet Union. But I would argue that Mao is the most successful and advanced revolutionary it has existed in human history. But we are not we are not 20th century China. We live in a different reality, a neoliberal reality. So how do we keep from being revisionist and getting rid of all revolutionary sentiment to try to push within the current conditions? And there's a line, there's a balance. There's a balance there. The line between dogmatism, stagnation, and revisionism. And I believe the answer is somewhere in between those two conditions. And if we have to look what's actually happening in the world. So if Mao, the most successful revolutionary in human history, I think he started out as an anarchist, mobilizing the peasantry, having like an anarchist book club. And why Mao was so successful is he looked at what actually was happening in the world, what achievements have been made in the same time period, different countries, the same time period. He looked at what the Soviet Union did, and he adopted dialectic materialism. He gave up anarchism and adopted dialectic materialism because Mao was inspired by the Soviet Union and Marxist-Leninist ideology and understanding. So what revolutions and positive movements are going on to this day that we can be inspired by? And I argue Bolivia is a great example of revolutionary movements that have victories that are going on today that we can be inspired from. And I shared a very good video from the Gray Zone. And the Gray Zone talked about how MAS, Movimiento Avanzada Socialismo, movement towards socialism, movement advancing socialism, is actually a grassroots coalition. It's not a traditional political party. It's definitely not like a political party in the United States, one of the major political parties that have a cabal that run at the top, and the rank and file have no leadership in that party. That is why the United States is arguably less democratic than a lot of countries, even China, which currently has a 90 million member communist party. The rank and file has significantly more actual input into the decisions of the party leadership. Rank and file workers in the United States, in both the Democrat and Republican Party, have no control over those parties on the national level. So let's let's contrast that with Bolivia. In Bolivia, the party itself was a grassroots coalition of religious organizations, indigenous organizations, trade unions. To be a member of MAS, Evo Morales' party, you can't be one as an individual. You have to be through one of those organizations that's in that coalition. And the organization I helped develop while I was in Greensboro, North Carolina, Triad Jobs with Justice, I believe we were doing something similar. We were trying to build as much working class power as possible by uniting the existing positive civil rights and labor groups. And that's essentially what Bolivia did. Their party was, and it was a third party. It wasn't one of the controlled parties. It was a grassroots coalition that built political power. And with that political power, they were able to take office. And they were able to stay in office because they had the respect and the power that comes from those mass organizations. When the fascist coup took place in Bolivia a year ago, it seemed like a defeat. But now, a year later, the people voted back in the movement towards socialism party, Evo Morales' party, and they did that through general strikes on election day. That took massive grassroots organizing on a national scale. They had to carry out a general strike on that election day. And there was goon squads. There was fascist goon squads intimidating people from voting. And I'm sure the indigenous people formed self-defense brigades and defended themselves against the fascist goons. They get out and vote. Now, I think that seems to be a working strategy. Bolivia was the fastest growing economy in South America under Morales. They did it in investing in the countryside and building up the countryside. And they did it in a way that respected the sovereignty and respected the rights of the primarily indigenous populations. Elders had a say. Community leaders, local community leaders had a say in how modernization was taking place, how advancements were taking place. Was controlled by the Socialist Party, which was in turn controlled by the grassroots coalition. And another thing, so a lot of leftists like to promote Bolivia and say it was positive, but like to disparage China. Well, the material reality is the success in Bolivia would not have been possible without low interest and no or little condition loans from China. So the stronger the imperialist bloc, anti-imperialist bloc gets, the more they can do better trade and advocate alternatives outside the imperialist system. The IMF, the International Monetary Foundation, when they give loans to poor countries and developing countries, oppressed countries, they say, if you want this money to pay your teachers, to build your roads, to build infrastructure, you have to implement austerity. You have to get rid of social programs. You have to privatize. You have to get rid of stuff that works. The IMF is designed as an imperialist institution for the United States and Europe to exploit the third world, to oppress. This is part of the major infrastructure of imperialism. The reason why Mexico is so poor, the reason why Latin America is so poor, the reason why Africa is so poor is because the IMF has maintained their poverty. So the United States and Europe can extract those resources, keep the people poor. And that is why we have mass migration problems, is because of imperialist policies like the IMF that give some loans but impose austerity to get those loans. Well, now Bolivia no longer has to go to the IMF. Now Vietnam no longer has to go to the IMF. African countries no longer have to go to the IMF. There's a new trading partner, China. China, which offers lower interest rates. China, which does not put austerity conditions attached to their loans. And that is a material reality, that China being able to support the global South, being able to support the anti-imperialist bloc, is a material win, not only for the anti-imperialist countries, but a material win if you look at it from the idea of international solidarity. If they can exploit the people in Africa, they can exploit the workers in the imperialist bloc. If they can exploit American workers, they can exploit African workers, they can exploit Bolivian workers, they can exploit South American workers. If one of us stands up, we all stand up. We stand up together, we unite and fight on a global, international scale. Long live the international working class, and death to its enemy, imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. And China offering those loans. China has many exploitative market policies, but China is planned. China is not imperialist. China is an ally of the international working class and the anti-imperialist bloc, and I believe they are one of the leading forces in the united front against imperialism. So that's what worked in Bolivia, a third party backed by the people. I believe that is the model that works. Look at Venezuela, petrosocialism. They're having issues now, largely because of sabotage created by the United States. The drop in oil prices, that's largely the problems of Venezuela. It's not because of the socialist system. The socialist system, you compare the conditions in Colombia, a U.S. ally, compared to the conditions of Venezuela, and conditions are far better in Venezuela. In Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro has given out millions of houses to working people. In Venezuela, there's art programs and food co-ops and things that benefit the people. Socialism is stronger, more effective, and eventually will overtake capitalism. And right now, I think that is the working strategy. Number one, step one, is to build workers' power. Build workers' power in mass organizations and ideological organizations. Promote revolutionary ideology. Replace the myths of the bourgeoisie for the socialist future. For the new ideology of a socialist future. Develop this ideology. Spread this ideology. Build workers' power. And then when we do get to strength, we can use the electoral systems. As Mexico has done, as Bolivia has done, as Venezuela has done, we can use the electoral systems to get candidates into power that truly represent our interest. Not back the Democrats, but support candidates that truly support our interests. And then those grassroots organizations can keep those politicians in power and can keep those politicians in check. If they try to get out of line and go against the interests of the working class, we can hold them in line. Without building working class power, without building workers controlled labor unions, community groups, there is no hope in the electoral system. Step one is build mass groups, community groups that can can both put politicians into power and hold those politicians accountable. There is no hope in the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party in the United States is both hopeless and criminal and commits acts of murdering us. Their act of not supporting and pushing through Medicare for all, socialized medicine. By denying us medical care that we, the working people, produce, they are killing 60,000 Americans a year because they are paid by the insurance companies. When Obama refused to keep the public option on the table, refused to even hear single payer at all, he was caving to the interest of the big pharma and the insurance industry, and literally killing working class people who produce all wealth, who produce education, who produce medical care. So in conclusion, revolutionary strategy. Work within the mass movements. Build workers' power outside of the control of the corporate duopoly. Use this to elect politicians who work within our interest so we can transition to socialism by nationalizing key components of the economy: transportation, energy, banks, destroy the power of the imperialists, and bring about a new society, a socialist society, where more people have more reason to give allegiance to a system that actually gives a fuck about them instead of just the imperialist capitalist oligarchies, the banking companies, the Bezoses, the Googles, the people who are destroying the entire world and keeping our standards of living for to maintain their power, trying to hold back history, hold back a new age for the working class. Don't be revisionist. Don't be left adventurist. Don't be a social democrat reformist. Be a revolutionary, an effective revolutionary that builds working class power and changes the conditions for the working class. All right, I'll go a little bit into the comments. Status. Today, right-wing opportunism and left-wing sectarianism often go hand in hand. It's very correct. Status. Moss combined indigenous movement with classical labor movement and Marxist intellectuals. We need to build as big of a coalition to build power as possible, with to lead it in a revolutionary direction. Way on Facebook. Wayne Conard. You know a lot about failure. The people are the state, and the state has family. America is going to have to pay for its ill-gotten gains. It is law, either that or denounce the creator, simple as 1, 2. Okay, interesting. Wade Conrad. Sounds like Democrats are headed to where the Republicans are already at. I would argue that the Democrats are not an improvement over the Republicans. They're simply a more effective ideological wing of convincing larger portions of the population that they have democratic rights in this country, and we don't. They're simply more effective. And the Republicans are large, and they're the more powerful. Honestly, the Democrats are the more powerful wing of the imperialist political camp in the United States. The Republicans are largely controlled opposition. Trump is a great. They can just blame Trump. They don't actually have to implement health care or jobs programs. They can just bash Trump and say, what are you going to do? Vote for Trump? That's what Biden goes out there and does. He says, well, go vote. Well, there was an immigrant activist who would say, my people are oppressed. I want rights. We want legal rights. We produce the wealth in this country. And then fucking Biden goes out, well, we'll vote Trump. That's the Democrats. They are two sides of the same lightsaber that Darth Maul has, slashing and cutting the working class and maintaining the imperialist capitalist monopoly capitalist order. Marvelous MB, blessed praying hands. Okay, I've gone 53 minutes. Comrade Freaky, what did I miss? Comrade Freaky. Jason Uruhu, still not convinced that China is socialist. I would say that China is socialist, but my definition of socialism is a transitionary stage from socialism, from capitalism to communism. And my requirement for a socialist country would be, number one, the state has to have supremacy over the capitalist market sector. And that state has to be working for the benefit of building up that country and improving the material conditions of the working class in that country. And I believe China does fit those requirements. Now, I also agree with a lot of the criticism, specifically the criticism from Marxist-Leninist Maoists about China. China has a large market sector. That market sector is extremely exploitative. It's still capitalism. They're extracting people's surplus labor. Those people have have little say over that surplus value. But the Chinese government uses at least a portion, if not the majority, of surplus labor, invested back in the country, and improves the working conditions, the conditions of the working class on a large level. And I would argue that is socialism. Now, I think also you got to take in consideration that they're doing with this inside all of these socialist countries are doing this within the context of the domination of the imperialist order, and it's a very hard strategy to come about. If we look at Vietnam, look at the two countries, Vietnam and North Korea. Okay, so North Korea, a lot of more dogmatic types who stick to ideology really love and support North Korea, and I support North Korea. North Korea was heroic. North Korea was almost destroyed. Like every building that was more than a single story was bombed in North Korea. Okay. And then they basically at least halfway kicked out the United States. They were able to form their own country. But because they were a communist country, they were completely isolated. The majority of the economic power in the world was controlled and manipulated by the imperialist bloc. So they were almost completely cut off from the global economy. And they are a mountainous country with little land for agriculture, and even within those conditions, being isolated, they've been able to build up their country. They've been able to have success, maintain stability, not be a colony like other countries in Asia. So they went with the isolationist approach. Let's go with Vietnam. Vietnam fought off the United States heroically, kicked the U.S. imperialists out of their country, and then they were able to use that power to develop socialism. When they started to develop socialism, they were also cut off from the world economy, and they decided, well, they're going to make trades. They took IMF loans, and they took whatever was necessary. They opened up, as China has done. They took whatever was necessary to improve their country. But the Communist Party still maintained control. And if you look at the material conditions, look at the way Vietnam has dealt with the COVID. They still are, I believe Vietnam is still a socialist country. Even though they were forced to take on some market reforms to have access to the market, the global market. They were still the communists and socialists were able to maintain power and regulate those market forces in a way that was beneficial to the country and continue to build up the country. And when things like COVID struck, they had the infrastructure and the political will to deal with it in a way that capitalist countries are not able to do. And anytime, I'm not taking this lightly, anytime you either imposed or take on market reforms, you are allowing exploitation in your country. I don't sugarcoat that shit. I support China, but they have exploitative labor practices. But on an overall case, they are offering better loans and trade and infrastructure to the imperialist bloc farther than the West. This is having a huge material benefit to the united front against imperialism, which I believe is the correct strategy in the global conditions facing the international revolutionary movement. A united front against imperialism, and I believe China is a part of this. I would say tentatively less so Russia is a part of this. They do deals with Syria. Russia does deals with Iran, and it benefits both countries. Now, I believe Russia may be more exploitative than China and their procedures, but both of them are offering better trade than the United States, the imperialists, and the IMF bloc. Its status, the Chinese labor movement is very strong and supported by the CP, and that's positive. And it's great to have a labor movement in socialist countries, and I believe it's absolutely integral of a checks and balances process. But overall, the overall revolutionary strategy is we need to destroy The imperialism led by U.S. imperialism. Imperialism led by U.S. imperialism is the greatest enemy that humanity has ever faced. And they control basically almost the entire global economy. I mean, China's getting bigger, but the U.S. is number one. If you add up the entire imperialist bloc, it still has more control, has more resources, and is more in is on a larger scale. The imperialist bloc is still firmly in control. Um, that's changing with the rise of the Eurasia and South American anti-imperialist countries, and that's positive. But they're still firmly in control, and they're one of the worst evils that's ever happened. All the drone strikes in the Middle East are made, all the wars in the Middle East are done for the benefit of the imperialist camp to destabilize those countries, keep those countries in poverty, and extort their resources, or simply shut them down as competition. They don't want them developing. So, all of that pain, all of that suffering that comes with mass chaos and poverty is caused by the imperialist bloc. They're some of the worst criminals in all of human existence. Both their parties, Democrat and Republican alike. Um, the imperialist bloc backs dictators like dictators and exploitative governments, bourgeois governments, like the government in Colombia, and like the Saudis, Saudi Arabia. The imperialist bloc claims it's the advocate of human rights, but they're backing despot monarchs who use immigrant slave labor in Saudi Arabia. Um, So, I mean, they're absolute disgusting and horrible and vile, evil people, and they must be destroyed. They're the new fascist of the day, the neoliberalist, the imperialist, the Hillary Clintons. They are the fascists of the day. Democrat and Republican alike are the number one enemy that must be opposed. And we must work with any and all forces that are opposing that power. That includes Iran, China, Bolivia, Nicaragua, even Russia to an extent is part of the anti-imperialist bloc. U.S. imperialism led by U.S. imperialism must be destroyed. And it is in the interests of the working class in the imperialist countries to do this. The labor aristocracy is dwindling and falling apart in the United States. There's more and more reason for black and white workers, workers here and oppressed national workers here, Afro America, Aslan, to unite and fight for better conditions and stand in solidarity with the united front against imperialism throughout the world. Comrade Freaky, what do you think of the Bundist movement? I don't remember exactly what the Bundist movement is. Earlier on my shows, I confused that with the Bundys, and that wasn't it. I think the Bundist movement was something else. Comrade Freaky, if you want to remind me, I think I studied the Bundist movement, but it's not coming to mind right now. If you want to remind me what the Bundist movement, I'll be able to answer your question more fully. Comrade Freaky and I add that the PRC, People's Republic of China, is the world's largest economy right now. It has done what the Soviet Union was going to be. Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I think China I think we're going to have to keep China in check. And whatever type of socialism happens in the United States is going to have to be whatever inspires the American people to do it, maintain our sovereignty. But they're a great ally in the united front against imperialism. They have a lot of problems, and I suspect as the imperialists fall and China rises, the people will no longer have to unite with their government against the imperialists. And whatever problems that China has, as imperialism falls, the Chinese people will be able to address the problems in their own country. And for US leftists to simply write off China and completely, while it's being viciously attacked by their own government, they're just doing a service for the imperialists. I've been going on over an hour now. I believe I covered a lot on a macro level in this show. If you want to share this out, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, please share this out. I believe this is one of the better holistic viewpoints I've offered in a while on this program. Um, this was a more theological. This was a more ideological um, show today. I try to do programs that appeal to the working class. This show today is largely for revolutionary in general to innovate revolutionary understanding and choose the right conditions and not become little dogmatic groups with one leader that can't question that leader, but to honestly study ideology, understand ideology, discuss ideology, and innovate it in a way that brings the revolutionary forward. So one day we may have all power to the people. Thank you, comrade.